Hey guys, Skraal here with a quick guide to Jedi Huffing instrumental gas sites. Just a couple things before I start about the technique. What we'll be doing here is using a prospect in order to signature tank the 4 battleships in an instrumental gas site, the type you find in C5 and C6 wormholes. And what we'll be doing is huffing the entire C320 cloud pretty much right under the noses of these battleships. What this will allow you to do is to make about 100 million ISK per hour per account huffing these sites. C320 is, of course, the most lucrative of all wormhole gas, and so this technique should hopefully allow you to make a fair amount of ISK. So I'm starting here in my prospect, cloaked up in a C6 wormhole with an instrumental site already bookmarked. Now what I'm going to do is, as I warp to this location at 100, I'm going to be dropping a ping just off grid. Well, sorry, just on grid, but just far enough away so that I can warp back to that ping and warp straight to a gas cloud. You can see the distance of your warp right there. Here's a good spot to drop the ping. As you can see, I landed a little ways off the site. I've got a ping right here, 520 kilometers away. I can warp right to that ping. And then I should be able to warp exactly to the gas cloud. This just cuts out a little bit of time and positioning to begin with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to warp here cloaked to the C320 cloud at 20 kilometers. And here is where I'm going to begin to set up my orbit to signature tank these 4 sleepless sentinels. Now, before I begin, I just want to go over the important parts of signature tanking here. My prospect has very low signature radius, and I'm using an afterburner here. So as long as I'm not burning directly towards or directly away from these sleepless sentinels, their damage will not apply particularly well, and I should be able to out-rep them with the single small shield booster I have. Another important thing to note is that while these sentinels have a long range for their guns, their web range is only 30 kilometers. So it's important that not only do I keep transversal, but also that I stay more than 30 kilometers away, or else they will web me and catch up to me, and eventually kill me. So those are the basics. Now, one annoying thing about EVE Online is that when you're setting up an orbit, you do not get to determine where your orbit goes. I will give you an example of that right here. I'm going to hit orbit around this cloud, and it's going to tell me where exactly my orbit goes. Now, as you can see, that orbit was going to take me more or less around in a circle directly back towards the sleepless sentinels. This is very likely to get me killed, and therefore I cannot simply orbit the cloud and, walk away from the keyboard. What I have to do is figure out where exactly in the orbit I want to be starting. Now again, you cannot choose the circle of the orbit. You cannot choose which direction it goes in, but what you can choose is where in the orbit you can start. So again, let's take a look at the orbit I've been given. As you can see here, my orbit's going to take me in a direction that goes roughly right back towards the sleepless sentinels. So what I want to do is start my orbit somewhere around this spot right here, so that instead of going towards the sentinels in this direction, instead I'll be going away from them over here. So I'm going to control space real quick, and what this requires is a little bit of manual piloting on my part. Nothing too serious. So I'm going to align myself in that direction. As you can see, I'm not going directly towards the sentinels. If I were to do that, they would almost certainly kill me in 1 or 2 volleys. What I'm going to do is decloak, I'm going to jettison my mobile tractor unit. That'll come in handy later. Turn on my afterburner, my shield booster, and then I'm going to be burning roughly to that point in the circle that I pointed out earlier. This should just take about 30 seconds or so. Momentarily, the sleepers will be aggressing. Yep, there we go. They've aggressed me. But as you can see, because my transversal's high, they are, for the most part, missing me. I will take a few shots, I'm sure, at some point, but if I do the transversal correctly, it will be nothing to be concerned about. So as you can see, burning off in this direction. Now this is roughly where the orbit started. So as you can see, hopefully this will not get me killed. Now, you'll notice my shields did drop a little bit there. That's because as I slowed down, I did it a little bit improperly, but as I slowed down, the battleships were able to get off a decent enough shot at me and were to take me down to almost half shields. But now that I've got my orbit going, and I'm moving at my maximum speed, you'll see that they are actually getting further away. They're now going to be chasing me in this orbit here. And the damage I'm taking is actually negligible, and my shield booster is repairing the damage. So even though that was not an ideal setup on my part, I did kind of mess up the transversal, it's still a little bit forgiving. And once you get it set up correctly, what's going to happen is I'm going to do a wider orbit around here, and the battleships, which are, as you can see from the velocity table here, they're going much slower than I am. So what they're going to do is they're going to continually try to catch up with me, and they're going to end up in a slightly tighter orbit, also spinning around the gas cloud, but they'll never catch up with me, and they will never get to that critical 30-kilometer threshold where they would start webbing me. So at this point, I could actually walk away from my keyboard, and the rats would never catch me, and I would be just huffing gas the entire time. So you see here, my orbit around the gas cloud is about 750 meters. That should remain stable throughout the whole thing. Slightly important to note because the range of the gas cloud harvesters is only 1,500 meters. So I'm roughly, or actually exactly halfway at that threshold. Now you can see the Sentinels, in their attempt to catch up with me, they are going to assume a slightly tighter orbit. They may at some point get a little bit close. Yeah, as you can see, this one, the closer one's getting a little bit closer. But given the speed that I'm going, they will never actually catch up. And they will assume a fairly stable orbit, roughly looking like what you can see my mouse doing here. Now, I'll do a quick survey scan of the C320 cloud. Each C320 cloud starts with 30,000 M3, or roughly 30,000 M3 of C320. A prospect, as I'll show you right now, has a 10,000 meters cubed ore hold. So that means it takes 3 prospects full of gas in order to completely clear the C320 cloud. You could do this a variety of different ways. You could do 1 prospect and huff it, 3 prospect holds full. What I do is I use 2 prospects, and I do, basically 1.5 on each. And the idea is, instead of having to warp back to your station every time you fill up, you have this nice and handy mobile tractor unit so that you can instead just jettison the C320 when you get full. Now, obviously, I've just started, so I'm not full yet, but I will jettison the gas to show you exactly how the mobile tractor unit scoops it in. So if you were to use 1 prospect, what you would do is wait until your gas hold gets to 10,000, jettison once, huff 10,000 again, jettison that, And then the final 10,000 you would simply just bring back to your station, drop that off, head back to the MTU, pick up another 10,000, and basically rinse and repeat until you've got all the gas back in your hold. Now, in a second, this mobile tractor unit will be scooping up this cargo container in space that is full of gas. So while that's happening, I'm going to show you how to safely scoop the MTU. So I'm actually going to warp over to this ping that I had set up earlier. As you can see, as I was slowing down, I did take a small amount of damage, but again, nothing crazy. Now, let's take a look at this MTU as it is bringing in the gas. So as you can see, the sleepers are hanging out here. They're actually fairly close to the MTU in this case, so this is not ideal, but as I'll show you, it's not a big deal. So what I'm going to do is, in order to scoop up the MTU, I'm going to warp straight there at 0. And as I'm in warp, I'm going to hit the scoop to cargo hold button. And as soon as I land and set up there, it should scoop for me. There we go. And it scoops. Now I'm just going to do a quick warp right back to the ping. As you can see, that was fast enough that the rats didn't even have a chance to lock me, let alone, get a volley off. So we're going to do something similar again to scoop the gas. Warp over here. I'm going to open up my cargo hold just to get ready. As I'm landing, as soon as I land on grid, or right next to it, it's going to give me an open cargo option. Scoop it over, and there we go. Kind of panicked here, not going to lie. Didn't have the right folder open, so I just warped to a random vital. But as you can see, I had set up the orbit before. The rats were not hitting me. I was able to jettison gas into the MTU, and then afterwards scoop up the MTU. So that's pretty much it. Once you get the orbit set, and once you're comfortable with walking away, you can literally do whatever you'd like. It takes about, let's see, an hour to fill up the cargo hold of a prospect. With max skills, so you'll have a full hour to do whatever you like while you're huffing. It's probably my preferred AFK ISK making activity. Sometimes I'll make food, sometimes I'll take a nap, take a shower, do whatever you like. Anyway, that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. Hopefully this helped you guys out, and will allow you guys to make some sweet ISK huffing instrumental gas sites. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.